So yes, welcome to our first demonstration. And you know what I always say about these demonstrations? They are really guided demonstrations for you to follow through on your own systems. So we're mainly looking at installing our Maria database server. We'll be installing on Ubuntu 2, installing the package MariaDB-server, but that's going to be installing the client as well. We're going to look then at connecting locally as our root account, but don't forget we have to elevate our privileges to do this. And we're going to list our databases and list the database root user that's connected in our MySQL and our users table to get an understanding of why we have to connect the way that we do when we're connecting as root. So when you're ready, we're going to find that command line. At the command line, you can see we're working on our Ubuntu 2 system. And it's here where we want to go through and install our MariaDB database server. So we can go ahead and use our sudo and apt install. I won't use a -y, so we will look at what is being installed. And we want the MariaDB-server package. As we go through, as we take a look at what is being installed as far as the additional packages, we've got the MariaDB client, the MariaDB common, and the MariaDB server. So we are installing the server and client on here. We can go ahead and choose yes to continue, and then away we go. The database server will be up and running. If I try and connect, though, as a standard Linux user, as the database root user, so we can use then MySQL, which is our database client, -u root, and then hit enter, and we can see then that access is denied. If we try putting in a password, so -p, we've got our password, don't know what the password is, perhaps blank, we hit enter, and we can see we still don't have access. So this is sometimes going to confuse people because they think maybe the database root user has a blank password and we should be able to connect. By default, it's using authentication via Unix sockets. So we're connecting to a file and only the root user in Linux has access to this. So we must go through and use a sudo MySQL -u root. And we can see now that we've connected into our database server. So we are up and we are running, but we have to elevate our privileges. Now, this makes it secure because then root can only connect by being on the local system and having root access to the local Linux operating system. With this done and dusted, let me clear the screen. Control and L still works at our MariaDB prompt. You can see at the moment where it says none, that shows the database context that we're in. And obviously we're not in any at the moment. If we look at the databases that we do have, we can go show databases. If I forget the semicolon at the end of the line, it goes on to a second line, but I can always add the semicolon. Say ideally, when we run that command, it show databases with the semicolon at the end. So we can then go through and see that we've got 3 databases by default. If I want to use a database, we can move into that database. So use MySQL, and don't forget about that semicolon. So that both reads in all of our database objects so we can use them in tab completion, but it's taken me to the database and we can see the prompt has changed. To leave the database server, I can use exit. But if I want to take myself directly to a database, then I just put the database name at the end. So I'm directly now in the MySQL database. If I look at the command describe, we can go through and look at the elements of a table. So if I go through and say, look at the user table, we can see all of the columns and the data types of that. If I clear the data out, we can run our select statement, so selecting our user and then the plugin for authentication. So these are columns that we want to choose from our user table. So we've only got the one user, it's the user root. And we can see the plugin that is being used is the Unix_socket. So that's used then for authentication. So we can gain a little bit of understanding about what's going on, and we can see then why we need to elevate our privileges to be able to connect as the database root user. Of course, there's nothing stopping me changing this to password-based authentication, but then that's going to limit my security. So normally when we want another user to connect, we'll create the user, set the password or what authentication we want to use, but have a separate user to the database root user who would have all privileges to the complete server and all databases. Again, once we've finished, we can use exit, and then we disconnect from our database session.